Just when you thought that Williams was on the straight and true, they are now facing struggles again. Williams this year have had a terrific season. They don't have a fast car, but it is fast enough for them not to be the backmarker team anymore after many years of being so. For a brief period, it looked like they could compellingly go after Alpine because they're having their own crisis right now. Williams are now having a relatively good period of stability. They have a very good team principal in James Vowles. They have an excellent team leader in Alex Albon. They have stable capital from Doralton Capital, who are actually there for the long haul instead of trying to get a quick buck. And you don't need me to tell you that based on Alpine's estimate about how much they're worth, they've most likely 4x their return, Doralton, but they're not giving it up yet. This is exactly the stability that Williams needs. However, there is a fly in the ointment, and his name is Logan Sargeant. Now, of course, I don't want to be bagging on this guy because plenty of people throughout the internet have been downing on Logan. The team principal is really fighting his corner. But is that really out of loyalty, or is it more like naivete? Because this is James Vowles' first year as a team principal, and maybe he can't see the wood through the trees. But hey, I'm not a team principal. I can't really make that comment. That's just how I see it from an outsider's perspective. But needless to say, Williams have had their best season in 6 years. Williams can now actually look to get 2 drivers who are not really considered pay drivers anymore. Of course, they can have sponsors and the like, but they are not necessarily buying their way into the team. Logan Sargeant kind of looked that way because he was part of the Williams Driver Academy, and it was thinking, okay, they're actually relying on their own stable of drivers, and they're actually doing something that the other academies aren't doing at the moment. Actually promoting their drivers. His form is actually looking increasingly shaky. Ever since the Hungarian Grand Prix, he has been making tons of mistakes. And that's a real shame too, because at the British Grand Prix, it looked like he'd actually turned a corner, almost bagging a point at their home race. That would have been fantastic. He was compellingly close to the Ferraris, and if it had been going on for a few more laps, he might have done it. All of these questions would have gone away. We'd have seen Logan scoring and going, wow, he did that in a Williams? Good job, Logan. I hope to see more of you. But that didn't happen. I feel for the mechanics. Throughout all of the TV broadcasts, I have seen that after Logan bins the car, the Williams mechanics look so dejected. I saw it the most at the Japanese Grand Prix. After Q1, when he had that last corner incident, the mechanics just looked like, oh god, we're gonna have to build that again. Albon even commented saying that, well, to be fair, that last corner was really tricky as well. Even he was having problems trying to keep that car going in one direction. And then, of course, what he had with Bottas, and then he points the finger at Bottas, but it's quite clear that Logan locked up and went straight into Valtteri, ending both of their races. So that's the thing I'm starting to see more of. Logan outwardly blaming others or complaining about his car and that it's not the right spec. But there is a reason for that because of what's been going on this season. James Vowles has openly admitted that because of the situation regarding spare parts and all of the stuff that's been going on with Logan's accidents, it has made an impact on the development for the 2024 car and what Logan has to have for the remainder of the season in terms of spare parts for himself. So, as he says to the media, ahem. Under the cost cap, what you don't want to be doing is overproducing parts. We've had more attrition than expected, I think it's fair to say. Yeah. We have enough to deal with the incident today. That's Sargent's crash in qualifying, and this is before what he did in the race. But it means we'll have to divert attention away from other items for 2024, whilst producing more spare parts before the end of the year. Now, okay, you don't need me to tell you that not actually producing parts for your 2024 car and moving resources away from that isn't a good thing. Now I want to draw your attention back to the Destructors Championship chart produced on Reddit by BasePro24 Chevy, an excellent compendium of estimations for what particular parts of an F1 car cost. So take this with a pinch of salt, but it does give you a very good understanding. It's changed considerably since I made a video on the subject. Based on estimates, Logan Sargeant has cost the team $4 million in damages, and that has increased drastically since the Hungaroring. And we're not even at the end of the season yet. Nicholas Latifi, in contrast from last year, he cost the team way less at about $3.3 million throughout all the season going to Abu Dhabi. We've still got about 6 more races left, folks, so I wouldn't be surprised if Logan has a couple more crashes. These next few tracks are going to be real driver circuits. They're very tricky. I hope he can pull his finger out and proves us all wrong. Alex Albon isn't innocent either. He's also had his fair share of accidents. His biggest one, of course, being from the Australian Grand Prix, and then he had that issue at Monaco. He's cost the team about $1.8 million. So Logan isn't entirely at fault here, but the team have had to deal with $6 million in damages to their car. $6 million at a team that couldn't even get that capex grant to improve their facilities, which are over 20 years old at this point. All of the other teams going, no, you can't have it unless we have that capex spending increase. These teams, they're all out for each other. They couldn't even throw Williams a bone here in terms of improving their aged facilities. But what does that tell you? Williams can be very resourceful for the limited tools that they've got. Just imagine what they could do with relatively modern tools. And admittedly, the 2024 regs are basically the same as this year's regs, so you really might not see much difference between this year's car and next year's car. But according to Ferrari, they are developing a really big package for next season, Project 676 supposedly. So you never know what the engineers are cooking unbeknownst to us in the middle of all of this, what radical innovation that they've got in store for the first race of the season next year, not wanting to put it on for this year, but then thinking about the next one. This diversion of resources and assets and personnel to then focusing on making more spare parts and then limiting what Logan has, because this is another thing for Logan, is that he has got less good parts. Albon has all of the new upgrades and developments that have been added because he's less likely to bin it, as we've seen many times. I mean, Albon does bin it, but he bins it less often, and he's more likely to score points. James Vowles has rightly said that that's a reason why Logan isn't as good, and we shouldn't expect the same results as Albon, but we should be expecting him to finish the race and be in contention for maybe a point, or maybe getting P12 and P13, because if Liam Lawson can do it, oh well, that's another thing. Liam Lawson scoring points in an AlphaTauri car, which is objectively the worst car on the grid, I mean, maybe not as bad after the upgrades, but that to me just screams of, uh-oh, this isn't looking good for Logan, he really needs to score now. Speaking of the American factor, is that really a factor? Because I've seen many comments within my videos, as well as other examples on social media and other videos, that state that American fans aren't all that bothered with an American driver, and especially an American driver that isn't doing particularly well. I don't really see that much hype about having an American driver, and all I've seen, and this is not fair for Logan, of course Logan knows what a kilometer is, of course he does. Do they really need to keep Logan just because he's an American? They should really keep Logan because they see potential in him, and they believe that he can actually ride through the storm of being a rookie and come out of it as a fairly competent driver with Alex Albon's tutelage to hand. And also, another thing going for Logan is that him being about 2 seconds behind the leaders, in comparison to all of the decades I've seen of Formula One, that's small fry. Sometimes you can get 5, 6, 7, even 10 seconds sometimes behind the leaders. And of course, that's down to cars getting better, cars getting more efficient, and the gap actually getting closer and closer and closer. But 2 seconds is still not the worst. And we all remember what happened with Mazepin. Logan is not Mazepin. If you're from the US and you watch my videos, do comment below about what you think of Logan Sargeant. Does he need to remain in the actual sport because he's an American? But needless to say, I feel like Williams, the actual team, are starting to get a little bit wary of having to repair the car so often and diverting efforts away from 2024's car, especially after this uptick in performance. Nobody at Williams ever expected for them to do this well this year. 8 months ago, it looked very certain that Williams might not make it, that their future looked doubtful. Jost Capito and the technical director just up sticks and left. We're not quite sure whether they were fired or they just quit, but they were gone. No kind of leadership at all until James Vowles came along, and he then steered the ship, and he's done an excellent job. However, I feel that all of this talk with Logan Sargeant, it's been very commendable. I give him loads of brownie points in terms of standing up for his young rookie when certain other team principals don't. This is really hopeful for Logan Sargeant's development. But this is the point where Williams need to really take a look at themselves and try and understand where they are as a team. Are they still a backmarker team that requires pay drivers and young rookies to try and get ahead? Or are they something more than that? Are they a team which can actually attract bigger drivers to go alongside Alex Albon? Could they attract the likes of F2's 2022 champion Felipe Drugovich, cast to the sidelines by Aston Martin because it's quite clear they're not going to really give up their second seat to anyone else? Or the likes of Liam Lawson? They kind of are talking about that, but that's been shot down now because Liam's not all that interested. And then of course Horner's not really keen on a 1-year loan deal. I mean, especially after they lost out to Alex Albon, who went to Williams on a loan. There's Mick Schumacher's circling around, of course. That's not going to go away until they actually figure out what's going to happen. But we're not going to find out who's going to be replacing Logan until long after the young driver test in 2023 after Abu Dhabi. They're not going to make the call right now. I will commend Vowles for having good logical explanations as to what's going on and trying to tell us all that Logan is improving. But it's really hard for us, the laymen, to see, to understand what's going on. We don't have the telemetry to see how Logan is improving. And I do appreciate Vowles being very transparent and open to us and bombarding us with information like the Mercedes people do. He's learned very well to do that because you know all the stuff that the Mercedes debriefs do? It just bamboozles you with information and you just go, information overload, okay, whatever you say. I'm starting to see this as just him being loyal to a fault. He needn't be, because Logan Sargeant wasn't his choice. Logan Sargeant was a choice of the Jost Capito period of Williams. They decided to promote Logan 1 year too early. He was meant to be in F2 this season and then develop further. Had we had Logan Sargeant coming in 2024, we might have had a different prospect, but no. Logan was half-baked. It's not his fault. Williams bit the bullet far too soon, and he's now underdeveloped, and James Vowles has had to make him catch up very, very quickly in the midst of public media, which is not fair for any young driver. I feel bad for Logan, I really do. But what he's doing right now is costing Williams tons of money and tons of development time, which they must capitalize on. And because they're no longer the 10th place team, they don't get all of that extra ATR time. If they end up in P7, they'll get 15% less ATR time than they would have done if they were just playing last. That is valuable time that they need to claw back. Are they going to try and push forward, catch up to the likes of Alpine, Aston Martin? The Williams car, the FW45 right now, has surprised many teams and other drivers about how good it is. Even Albon, at certain places like Zandvoort and Singapore, weren't expecting to actually be in line for points. Williams are on the good up and up, especially with their goal sponsorship as well. So it's time for Williams to actually look at themselves and make the call. Do they want to try and just focus where they are and keep Sargeant for another year and see what happens and make good on their academy investment and justify it? Or are they willing to rebrand themselves as a team on the up with two relatively close and skilled drivers and try and maybe reduce that destruction bill? Yeah, that is something that nobody wants to have, that particular title, which you can see in full in this video next, where things have changed quite drastically.